thought I'd open this Bible class by asking, is there someone with a question that's burning, that's been burning for a while? I'm talking about a biblical question. Please don't get personal. Something that you struggled with that maybe I could help you with. Yes.
How does someone begin to acquire a relationship with God personally? How did they start?
How did you begin personally? And that's an interesting question. Simply because when he made us at first, if you check the Bible carefully, you will find that when he made us, he came to visit us. And I don't want to, yeah, all right, since I asked. Since I asked. Now, we understand that God does not cross the line. What he does is he makes us and he gives us this corporeality, which is the flesh. And he gives us our flesh, and within the flesh, because we're a trichotomy actually, we're body, soul, and spirit. Now, what he did was, when he made man, he made us in his likeness and in his image. Once he made us in his likeness and in his image, he had to give us dominion. He had to give us dominion because there's absolutely no way that he was going to look at his likeness and it be subordinate to any other creature. So he had to give us dominion. Now, the corporeality or the flesh is actually, it was created so it can die. All right? I'm taking the long road, but we'll get there. Whatever he created out of the dust of the ground has time to it. Because he existed from eternity. And as an eternal being, there is no time restrictions. Now, when I was a little guy, I had problems with my dad teaching me that he was eternal. Because I would say to my dad, if I were to go into his past, if I were to go from here into God's past, and I could keep going and going and going and going into perpetuity and going into infinity and going and going and going until there is no place to begin, how did he ever get to right now? If here is my starting point, and he has no beginning, and I start going back and 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 back into infinity, how did he ever get to right here? The problem was, my little puny brain was trying to assess eternity with time. And time and eternity are contradistinct, they are antithetical. You cannot describe eternity with time, because time is eternity is an ever-existing right now. There is no past in eternity, and there's no future in eternity. So he is an eternal being. But he chooses now to make man in his own image. Now, there's still another problem with that. Because now he chooses in himself before the foundation of the world. So the very fact that you're asking that question is because you have been chosen. Because you wouldn't be stimulated to want to get to know him unless he chose you to know. Now, can I go for it? We're chosen in him before the foundation of the world. And I was going to Paul anyway. That's where I was going tonight. Ephesians chapter 1. And being chosen in him before the foundation of the world is what we call an anthropomorphic term. Don't let it frighten you. It just has to do with anthropology. It has to do with man. And it has to do with modifying a term that is heavenly so an earthly individual can grasp. Remember when he talked to Nicodemus, he would say, Nicodemus, I'm telling you of earthly things and you don't understand. How can I tell you of heavenly things? So he has to bring it within the realm of our intellectual capacity to understand. And we call it anthropomorphic. Now, in this case, what we have is a problem. Because we are chosen in him before the foundation of the world. But I submit to you very carefully that it's an action that didn't happen. We're chosen in him before the foundation of the world, but we've got a problem because we've got two attributes that we have to marry. We have the fact that he is eternal, has no beginning. And then we have to combine that with the fact that he is omniscient, which means he has all knowledge at all, I gotta go anthropomorphic, quote unquote time. There is no anthropomorphic, I'm quoting again, time in the existence of God that he didn't have all knowledge. So from his concept, and he has none, he always knew. There was never, quote unquote, time in the existence of God that he didn't know everything. So when did he choose?
That's good, Doc. That's good.
Have I lost you? Since his conceptualization, and he always has been there, then he has always known everything. So there is never a time, quote unquote time, in the existence of God when God didn't know that you would be here tonight. And the only reason you're here tonight is because you were chosen in him before the foundation of the world, which means when the devil was messing with you, you were already his. Let me go over that again. Let me go over that again. You know, sometimes, and we'll talk about that tomorrow morning when we talk about ministry, that many times we hear things as preachers that stimulate us. And the other guy says it and he gets a great response. So we just assimilate it into the system of our presentation without checking the theological soundness. One of the things that got me excited, I'd jump up and get real happy, when the preacher would say, the devil should have killed me when he had me, but I got away. Well, I've got news for you. If I'm chosen in him before the foundation of the world, the devil never ever really had me. I lived like he had me. I acted like he had me. I shot up dope and drank like he had me, caroused and ran around like he had me, but he never really had me because I was already chosen in him. Now the profundity of the question rests on the fact that he had to create us. So whatever he created didn't exist. It's not eternal. because he had to create it. And creation introduced time. So when he formed us out of the dust of the ground, he formed us out of what is ephemeral. Ephemeral, just another cute way of saying temporal or brief. But ephemeral goes with eternal. So I got to use it like that. So my corporeality, or what he formed me out of, is ephemeral or temporal. It's time. Now, but God does not cross over. He does not cross over into the flesh, because when he formed man, if you notice carefully, he had everything in place for man before he formed man. Because what he wanted was to make sure that the corporeality, or the flesh of man, had everything he needed, because God didn't come to visit his flesh. Let me go over another way. When he formed man out of dust of the ground, he made it in his image, and we're still in his image, but we're not in his likeness until we're saved. See, when Adam sinned, he didn't lose his image, but he lost his likeness. Oh, no. So here I am, a creature created out of time. But then God leans over and breathes into me a part of himself. So externally, I'm a creature of time. But when he breathed into me, he breathed his spirit into me, and I became a living soul. God never intended for the flesh to control the soul. He always intended for the spirit to control the soul and keep the flesh in its right place. But when man sinned, his spirit died. So God had no more connection. So what she's feeling is a calling of God to seek him out, and he has to use her mind in order to relate it to her experience. Did I miss you, or did I shout at you? Let me back it up. Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about the significance of revelation in psychological development. How the revelatory move of God enhances and embraces our psyche. That's very critical now, because the pull of the Spirit, in order for me to know that God is pulling my spirit, he has to give me a desire to want him. No man comes except the Father Suru drag, which means when you felt like coming, it didn't originate with you. Now, I'm gonna mess with you. He gives us the creature comfort so that when he comes to visit in the cool of the evening, we're not busy taking care of the physicality. And he does not cross the line. He doesn't cross the line to the point where you have said that the Lord is my husband, and some brother said that the Lord is his wife. Now, if you mean he can keep you, I'll give you an audience. But if you're trying to tell me after you leave this service, the Lord's going to hold you through the night, I suggest you get back on your medicine. He doesn't cross the line. So he looked at Adam and said, it's not good that man should be alone. Well, here is a question. Here's a question. How can he be alone if God is there? Because I will not cross the line. I need him to have a mate suitable. I need him to have somebody on his level where I don't function. Now, he made quite a point when he said, it's not good for him to be alone. He needs somebody on his level. Which means if you're with somebody and they're not on your level, you're still alone. I don't want to mess with you, but he said, I want to give you somebody suitable so you won't be alone. He does not cross. He doesn't cross the line, and suitability now. I must deal with my brothers about suitability and weaker vessel conversation. Because oftentimes we minimize, departmentalize, ostracize. Is there any other size? Our sisters when we call them weaker vessels. But remember now, male and female created he them. The weaker vessel thing has caused us to minimize the significance of the woman. And this is 2019 and she's still fighting for a sense of significance. In a man, this is a man's world. But he did continue to say, would be nothing without a woman. He did get that revelation. I have at home a monster thermos. I mean, you can literally drive a car over this thing and it will still function. I mean, it's a wicked kind of, I'm working in the oil field kind of a thing. But I have some glasses from Tiffany that are extremely frail. They'll shatter on a touch. But whatever I can put in that thermos, I can put in the glass. The weaker vessel is only the fact that she is a glass and I'm a thermos. But her content is no different from my content, because integrity, creativity, intellectuality, honesty, wonder, and beauty is not limited to the outside. We got a whole lot of folk with great packages but no gift. So weaker vessel is for sex dimorphism. That is, she has to carry babies. That don't make her less smart than you, less creative. She's just as brilliant as you are, my brother. Because God didn't make her less than you. He made her to function differently. Oh, get that straight now. Get that straight. You got to get that right. Now, he is pulling us into the spiritual aspect, and he doesn't cross the line. Notice what Paul says. Paul says, if you're married, you have to care about the things of the world, that you may please your wife or your husband. You got to get up off your knees. Well, I got to pray for y'all in Dallas. I really do. He doesn't cross the line. The battle then, when he draws us to him, is the battle that has become so obvious because once Adam sinned, flesh became dominant. So flesh controlled the soul. And spirit was dead, so man was reprobate. In other words, none of us can come to him of ourselves. He has to stimulate in order for us to reciprocate. And all John says is we love him because he first loved us. The question I have always asked myself, still asking myself, is how much does God have to put into me to get the little I give him back? When I grasp the significance of what he's done, it should be easy to move, because he tells me all that is in the world: lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And let me tell you what feeds that: money. I don't want to mess with you too badly. The devil is not the worst animal in the zoo. You can scream devil, devil all you want to. The devil is not the meanest animal in the zoo. The devil has never been defined as the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. Now notice carefully. Being broke is not the root of all evil. And having a lot of money is not the root of all evil. It's loving it. And the reason why it is so easy is because we're connected to the comfort things of life based on God's ability to take care of our flesh. But the only reason he's taking care of our flesh is to be able to meet us without us grieving over acquisition. I want to have time with you. And when I come to visit you, I want your mind free from the cares of this life. So that's why I provide for you. And if you follow my principles, you'll never have to worry about having anything, because I've set in my relationship with you the principles to take care of your flesh. So when you're taken care of in your comfort zone, you don't praise yourself. You praise the God who made it available so that he could visit you whenever he chose without you having to stress on anything but him. This is why he says, labor not for the meat that perishes. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, his righteousness, and all of your stuff will be added to you. When he said you pray, and I don't go to all night prayer. No, I'm not knocking your all night prayer. Pray all night. They pray all night back in LA. City of Refuge, don't they pray all night? But they don't call me. No, I don't want to get too deep, or maybe I'm too shallow. But my conceptualization of God, and I suggest to you that everybody in here has a unique and idiosyncratic conceptualization of God that nobody else can duplicate or imitate. Nobody can think of God like you. Now, Jesus was asked by his disciples, teach us to pray. That's what he asked him. Teach us to pray. I did 5 messages from the Lord's, you call it the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer is John 17. Matthew 6 is the model. The model. It's a model. It's a model. Teach us to pray. Here's how you pray. I did 5 messages. I said, please, when I say hour, hit the stopwatch. When I say amen, hit it. In the 5 times, it went from 28 to 31 seconds. They said, teach us to pray. And he taught them a prayer that went from 28 to 31 seconds. Why am I praying all night? Now, maybe my conceptualization of God is off. But they said, teach us to pray. It went 31 seconds. Then when I read further, he got really upset. He said, I don't want you coming to me with vain repetition as the heathen. Because let me give you some information, he said. I know what you have need of before you even ask. Some of us need to get up off our knees and go get what he's got for us. Most of us spend our time praying for problematic people. And we request leaders and pastors, and we request one another and prayer partners, mothers and cousins, we request that they pray for problematic people. But what he showed me in that text was that everybody that God has his hand on, who is moving closer to him in the kingdom, that's who we should pray for. Because anytime you get close to God, you become a target of the enemy. And he goes after folk that have risen up and gotten away from him. And I tell you who he really wants. He wants the folk who come back in his kingdom and pull people out. And pull people out and pull people out. And when you're blessing other people and other people are being saved by what you do, everybody ought to be praying for you, because you are a target. Oh, he'll come after you with everything he's got because you are upsetting his kingdom. Every time you open your mouth and declare the goodness of God, it makes him sick. Every time you tell somebody, I was there, but look at me now. And if I came out of that, you can too. It makes him sick. And when you sit around in church and won't tell it and act like you always been wonderful and saved and beautiful and nice and sweet, and won't open your mouth and tell folk, I look good now, but you ought to see where I'm coming from. I don't look nothing like where I've been. God brought me out with a mighty hand, and I'm not going to let anybody make me feel embarrassed about where God brought me. I ain't gonna be embarrassed. It only proves his power. That's all it proves, is his power. Now, the question you have to ask yourself when you move from philosophical preaching to psychological preaching, because the greatest work of the minister, and why after you're saved you come out here on Tuesday, Wednesday, you come out here Sundays, you buy material, because now the greatest work is be not conformed but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. If I come to church and there's to be a mind renewal exercise, then preaching has to shift from being philosophical to being psychological. I just talked about being chosen in him before the foundation of the world. Now the question now becomes, what were you thinking before I read it, and how do you think now? So here's a question I ask God as I'm studying. Why are you telling me this? Why do you want me to have this particular information? And my conceptualization of God says to me, I want you to have this information for you to know that I had you before the devil did. And everything you went through, your childhood abuse, being abused in the bathroom as a 7-year-old, everything you went through, I was there with you. I walked through every one of your mistakes, everything somebody else did to you, I was there with you. And what we were doing together was putting some ammunition in the war room so that when I brought you to that place of conversion, you would be equipped to touch lives everywhere, because I broke you into little pieces. Stop being embarrassed about your past. Don't let anybody, I'm closing, don't let anybody minimize your experience. He brought you through it. He watched you in the middle of it. When others were losing their mind, he was protecting yours, because he had a purpose for your life. Look how many people you've blessed because of what you went through. And you have gone through some stuff you don't want anybody to go through, so you stop them from going through by giving them your experience. My brother, if you spent 7 years in jail and it caused you to keep 100 boys from going, it was worth it. It was worth it. How many of you have started ministry for battered women out of having been battered? wouldn't have the sensitivity if you didn't have the experience. He walked through it. What he's saying to me now, Noel, is I was there in your darkest hour because I was accumulating information so that I could show you how to touch people who were there and are there, and we're going to get them out together. But you would not have qualified if you didn't have the experience. I'm closing. The psychological aspect is critical because God has to change my thinking before he changes me. And then I change my life. I want to talk to preachers and teachers and leaders who have fallen. And you've fallen and written yourself off. Now, I want to ask you a question. When God called you into ministry, he didn't know what was going to happen? Oh, you mean the saints went and told God, he ain't no good no more, Lord? And the Lord said, oh, I got me some new information. Some that I never had. I didn't know he'd act like this. I'm really glad these saints, they love the Lord so much. They love me so much. They bring me all the information. Ain't nobody prayed for him. They just talked about him. I don't want to rock your boat. I just want to turn it over. I don't rock your boat. God forgave David. And David's sin was catastrophic. It was a cataclysmic extirpation. It was major. It was major. Don't even downplay it. It was major. The wonderful thing about David, what spared David, when they say he's a man after God's own heart, many people misinterpret. He's a man after God's own heart because he was merciful. When he could have taken his enemy out, Saul, he didn't do it even at the plotting and pleading of his own men. Kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. You know when somebody's been after you and you have a bunch of folk around you and you got him now and they start and kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. Do you know how many times you had to rebuke people who wanted you to dislike who they dislike and like who they like? Kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him, kill him. David wouldn't touch him and was hurt even because he had taken a piece of his skirt. Now, it's interesting that God forgives David. And God says to David, the ramifications of this I cannot discuss, we'd have to go to dinner. God says to David, I have forgiven you, but the child has to die. Now notice now the situation he's in. Bathsheba's in a situation where she has her first child in an embarrassing situation. She can't be excited about it because she's got to hide it. David, it's really interesting because here is a king now, he's a man. And now he's have to act like a wuss because he done orchestrated a man's murder, dead. So he's got to, back up. When people have relationships like an adultery or whatever it is, what it does is it does something to the mind. Because, first of all, you want to be excited about who you're with. You want to be excited about who you're with. I'm talking about the psychological impact that revelation brings. You want to be excited. Oh, look who I'm with. Who we going to dinner with? And all you hidden. And you have to have the kind of mindset, reduction, to know how wonderful you are, but be hidden. Now here is this 6'8", 250 pounds of proportion protoplasm lying to 110-pound woman wet. He has to give up the strength of his manhood to have to fabricate a lie because he was somewhere where he wasn't. So he's reducing the energy psychologically of who he is because now he's into self-reduction. That's why I learned something. I learned it. Didn't nobody teach me this? Oh, you thought I picked this up out of a book. You know, I'm going to teach some grown-ups one day. The psychological debilitation, because God is always right. We stretch it, we twist it. We try to get away with it. But it's self-destructive. Because he gave us the manual by which to operate the car. He gave us the manual by which to enjoy our bodies. Yes. But we distort it because of greed. The psychological impact becomes critical now because it releases you. The Word of God releases you. Now, the greatest psychological impact that the Word has on every one of us is to teach us to love ourselves. The Word teaches self-love without it being inordinate. He teaches you to put value on who you are. And when you put value on who you are, you don't take a lot of junk from a lot of folk when it's not necessary, where God does not expect you to do it. But when you think you deserve to be walked on and deserve to be mistreated, you allow it. But when God releases you in your mind and you can say to anybody, it's not just Noel Jones in here, it's Christ in me, the hope of glory. And you cannot dehumanize me, because you don't control how high I go. He controls how high I go. Let the haters hate, because if you don't have any haters, you're not that gifted. Give somebody a high five. Say, neighbor, I have a new mind. My mind is made up, and I'm looking up to go higher, higher. Woo, I feel like shouting. God bless you tonight. Heaven smile on you tonight. Give somebody a high five. Say, I got a new mind. God's working on my mind. I'm beginning to love myself. I'm beginning to love my journey, love my experience. I am somebody. God made me somebody. Oh, glory to God. I'm not going to wander around in the wilderness for 40 years. I'm going straight to the promised land. I'm walking straight into my blessing. You ain't going to have me walking round and round and round and taking 40 years for what I can do in 6 days.